From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Wednesday, November 19th. Here's what we're covering on today's episode. 19 New Mexico schools are no longer designated by the state's public education department for poor academic performance after showing strides in student achievement and in improving learning environments. With more on this development, I'm now joined by the Journal's education reporter, Noah Kalabach. Noah, thank you so much for joining me. I was hoping you could tell our listeners a little bit more about this list from the Public Education Department and what it means for these schools to be taken off of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 4 designations that the Public Education Department gives to schools that are struggling, and it's kind of to meet them where they're at, or based on certain needs, whether a graduation rate is kind of off, whether a certain demographic is underperforming, things like that. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, 19 schools, 9 of those are APS schools, and we actually wrote about one of them, Parajito, which is South Valley. I mean, I'm not from Albuquerque, so someone can correct me, but I believe it's basically south of the South Valley. And that was a school that just saw, literacy rates increase, performance across the board. And I'll say, as someone who got to go out there and see not just students learning reading, but math as well, it seems like they have a lot of effective strategies in place. Now, something to note about these designations and something that PED told us in an interview yesterday is, it does indicate, hey, your campus has problems. You need to fix X, Y, or Z at your school. They also give you resources. So Parajito, again, good example. They gave them a coach on a grant, and she was teaching the teachers, how to teach basically the science of reading, which people in education spaces kind of call the Mississippi Miracle, which really targets early literacy, makes sure that, there's an intense focus on phonics, things like that. So, yes, these schools will get a designation, but it's not even like in neighboring Texas when TEA is F and we're taking over the district because this campus is struggling. It's a little bit more of a, hey, let's provide these resources. And eventually, yes, at some point, if a campus stays on that list, is just chronically on there, PED has the power to shut it down. But a lot of times it seems like they are allocating as many resources as they can to these campuses to try and help these districts improve their scores, their performance, things of that nature.
And Noah, one part of your story I found really interesting is the fact that PED officials are really crediting APS's improvements to align between the district's strategic plan and state goals. Can you expand a little bit more on what exactly they mean?
Sure. So the people who have been reading APS coverage in the Journal for a while remember back in 2023, the Albuquerque Public Schools Board of Education set a list of goals and guardrails. There's some question about what could happen to all of those, but the one that that Sherry Jett, who's the chief academic officer for the district, leaned into when we talked about some of the turnaround at these schools was skills, habits, and mindsets. And that seems to be one of the less controversial goals, if you will, among some of the main political factions that make up the APS board. So, APS administration, I should say, has expressed some confidence that this focus on improving students' self-efficacy will prevail no matter who's on the board, and that they can kind of keep using it as a way to try and improve the culture at these schools, and with that, the academic performance. I think obviously there's alignment with there's certain things that both APS and PED want, and structured literacy, I think, is a big one. The state has pushed to make early literacy it's really been a primary issue for them since 2019. And we're starting to see, some of these strategies yield results as well. So I think, both APS, PED have focused a lot on early literacy, are celebrating similar gains. And it goes without saying as well, APS is the largest district in the state. If their test scores go up, PED is probably going to see a jump as well, and vice versa. So, there has to be alignment, but I definitely think to a degree there are some key issues in the classroom that both PED and APS have said, hey, this is a priority for us. This is how we're going to approach it. And those have been very similar approaches and yielded similar results, it appears.
And Noah, despite this good news of these campuses being removed from this designation list, there still are 28 APS campuses that are still designated, correct?
That is correct. And a good number of those are charter schools, which APS does charter, but they don't oversee day-to-day operations. That they don't pick the principal. These schools have their own governing boards, things like that. But yeah, there are 28 campuses. There's even a couple high schools, Rio Grande, I believe. Highland is on there as well. So, there's still some need for improvement at other campuses in the district.
And Noah, last question before I let you go. PED leaders are really stressing that while these designations can be concerning, there are still additional resources these schools can unlock that will help them kind of dig their way out of this, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We mentioned at Parajito, they provided a coach to teach the teachers how to teach these literacy a certain way. And that was a grant that PED kind of made happen, or provided, I should say. So yeah, I think things like that, they'll get help in the form of a grant. They will provide, they'll throw resources at these schools and try and help them. They really do partner with the districts to try and make sure that it's a joint effort, and it's not just a finger wagging. Hey, you got to fix this. You got to make it right. It does seem like they provide resources for these schools to improve.
So good news for these 19 schools across New Mexico finding their way off of this low performance designated list, including, as you mentioned, Noah, the 9 APS schools. Journal Education reporter Noah Kalabach with the latest. Thank you so much, Noah.
Thanks, Gino.
In other headlines from the newsroom, a new Legislative Finance Committee report shows that youth referrals to New Mexico's juvenile justice system have dropped over the past 2 decades, largely due to a greater emphasis on community-based rehabilitation. Still, recidivism remains high. Of roughly 113,000 juvenile referrals over the last 11 years, 58% were re-referrals, a trend driven partly by the shortage of behavioral health and treatment services. The report highlights deeper underlying issues. 86% of juveniles in state custody have 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, and about 1/3 had previous involvement with child protective services. Lawmakers expressed alarm over a recent post-pandemic rise in juvenile referrals, questioning gaps in access to mental health care and why youths are allowed to decline treatment. CYFD officials say they are using risk assessment tools to determine whether juveniles need treatment or secure placement, and stress that low-risk youths aren't detained while high-risk youths aren't released. The agency currently oversees 2,349 juveniles and reported 631 firearm-related detentions since September of 2023. The report notes significant cost concerns, with state-run juvenile facilities costing about $345,000 per youth annually, far more than community treatment programs. But the state is facing a shortage of behavioral health providers, worsened by the loss of 1,500 providers between 2022 and 2024. Lawmakers are expected to revisit juvenile justice reforms during the upcoming 2025 legislative session. New Mexico's federal lawmakers are helping lead a bipartisan effort in Congress to repeal a controversial provision tucked into a recent stopgap funding bill, a measure that ended the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history. The provision requires the FBI and DOJ to alert Congress when a senator is under investigation and allow senators to sue the government for at least $500,000 if their subpoenaed personal records are mishandled. 8 Republican senators could benefit from the rule, as their phone records were subpoenaed during the federal election interference probe involving President Donald Trump. Critics say the provision gives lawmakers a special financial shield unavailable to ordinary citizens. Representative Teresa Ledger Fernandez, a Democrat from New Mexico, and Representative Austin Scott, a Republican from Georgia, each introduced House bills to repeal the measure, while Senators Martin Heinrich, a Democrat from New Mexico, and Mark Kelly, a Democrat from Arizona, are sponsoring the Senate's repeal bill. All 3 versions take slightly different approaches, one retroactive, one immediate, and one requiring repayment of any awarded damages, but share the same objective: to eliminate the payout option entirely. Ledger Fernandez and Heinrich denounced the provision as self-serving, arguing lawmakers should not negotiate, quote, windfalls for themselves while rejecting help for working families. Some senators who stand to benefit, like Lindsey Graham, say they plan to sue. Others, like Bill Hagerty, say they will not seek damages despite criticizing the investigation. And Rio Rancho Mayor Greg Hall announced he will not seek re-election in March, ending a 12-year tenure as he shifts his focus to running for governor of New Mexico. Hull, who was first elected in 2014 and is now finishing his 3rd term, says it was the right time for, quote, fresh energy and new leadership to guide the city forward. In his announcement, Hull highlighted key accomplishments, including water preservation efforts, the creation of a city permanent fund, long-term infrastructure improvements, and projects aimed at enhancing quality of life for families and seniors. He noted the national recognition Rio Rancho has received during his time in office as one of the best places to live, raise a family, and retire. Hall will serve through the end of his current term, with voters selecting a new mayor in the March 3rd municipal election. He expressed gratitude to residents, staff, and city leaders for their support, and is now one of 2 Republicans officially in the governor's race, alongside State Senator Steve Lehner of Aztec. They joined 3 Democrats already running: Sam Bregman, Ken Miyagi-Shima, and Deb Haaland. The Leading News is powered by the journalism of the Albuquerque Journal. If you enjoy hearing all of the stories we share with you here daily, please consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Journal by utilizing the discount code in our show notes. Every subscription helps support local journalism and allows us to provide you with the news that matters to you. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today there's a slight chance of showers with thunderstorms possible after 5 p.m., mostly cloudy with a high near 63. As for this evening, a chance of showers and thunderstorms does exist around 8 p.m. with a low around 42. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the Leading News. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll be back tomorrow.